Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Transcending Together podcast. It is me, Alec John Bell, and I am here today to talk to you about a topic that I am very, very, very interested in. Today we are going to be talking about one of my personal spirit guides, Mother Mary. And I'm here today with a sugar-free Monster because I am diabetic, and if I drink a regular Monster, I will completely die. I will keel over. So I'm drinking a sugar-free Monster. So don't mind me. Anyway, so today we're talking about a topic that is very important to me, and I wanted to do this for the second episode because I recently read a book, and that book is Walking with Mary by Edward, I believe, Surrey is how you say his last name. I'm going to refer to him as Edward because I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce his last name. So I recently read this book within the last couple of weeks, and I am just like amazed by the things that I read in this book, and it really encouraged me to want to get on here and talk about Mother Mary and how important she is to me. And I've been feeling really connected to her lately, and as a Christian witch, I know that some people who are not Christians who may be listening to this podcast are probably like, Alec, I don't want to talk about Mother Mary because, she's not very important to me. But she is important to me, and I think that I just wanted to talk about her. So here we are talking about her. I have no idea why the light keeps flashing like that. I apologize. I have absolutely no idea what that flashing light is. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that light. I apologize. So, sorry. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, so let's kind of get into this. So like I said at the beginning of this episode, I am a Christian witch. So if you are new to Transcending Together and you don't know who I am not a Protestant Christian, and I am not a Catholic Christian. I am kind of like my own little sort of Christian, I guess. And one thing that's really interesting about Mary, and I'm posing this question today in this episode, is whether or not Mary is the queen of heaven and earth. I think that it's a really interesting question because Protestants, which is what I grew up as, don't typically believe Mary to be the queen of anything. They don't believe in her queenship. But Catholics, on the other hand, do believe in her queenship. So I think it's kind of an important discussion, and I wanted to talk about that today. So here we are. I'm happy that you're here. If this is your first time, joining on my videos, or, first time, this is only the second episode of the podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast, welcome. This is an all-inclusive space. I want to make that very clear, and I'm going to make that very clear in every single episode. This is not just a Christian space. This is not just a witch space. This is a space for all people of all different religions and spiritualities to come together and talk about different topics. Just because the second episode is a Christian topic doesn't mean that we're not going to be covering other topics from other religions or spiritualities in other videos. So just because this is a Christian episode does not mean that there's not going to be other kinds of videos later on. So let's kind of get into this. So who is Mother Mary, and why are we talking about her? If you have no idea who Mother Mary is, basically Mother Mary is the mother of Jesus Christ. I know that Mother Mary appears in other religions. Like, I know she appears in Islam, I believe. If I am wrong on that, then I apologize in advance. But I believe that she appears in Islam. I know that Jesus does. So I I believe she kind of is a figure among different spiritual paths. So, but she is basically the mother of Jesus Christ, who is in Jesus Christ is the center of Christianity, like the focal point, the person that Christians worship. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my personal relationship with Mary. So Mary, I never really had a personal relationship with Mary growing up. I never really, I don't know. I just never really felt drawn to her. I never really felt drawn to Jesus either, but I never really felt drawn to Mary, and we never put a big focus on Mary in our household. And it hasn't been until like the last 2 years that I started really getting interested in her and who she was, and really started to learn that Catholics put a lot of focus on her. And I never knew why they did that. And I think after reading this Walking with Mary book, I definitely understand why they put as much attention on her as they do, because she's such a big figure. And I feel like Protestants don't pay attention to her as much as they should. Like, she's so important. So for me personally, she is a mother to me. She guides me, and don't get me wrong, I don't worship Mary. I don't believe that she is a god or anything like that, but she is definitely somebody that I go to sometimes whenever I need her help. And I do believe that she helps me, just like my own mother would. And I think that that's really important to talk about. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say about her in my personal life. I love Mary. She's really great. She's really important to me. And I have pictures of her around my apartment. I have a statue of her on my altar. Again, I don't worship her, but I do place her at very high value. And after reading this Walking with Mary book, I really do... Well, I'll save my thoughts on her queenship till the end of this episode. So let's dive into the story of Mary. So I'm going to talk about things that are in this Walking with Mary book, but I'm not going to cover every single thing that was in this book because I don't want to completely spoil this book for you. Definitely go and pick it up, whether you're Protestant, Catholic, not Christian at all. It's a really interesting book to read, and I found it very fascinating. And if you want to learn more about Mother Mary, this is the perfect book to read. So I would definitely get into that. But yeah, let's learn a little bit more about Mary. So basically, Mary who was she before the conception? She was betrothed, which apparently in those times meant that she was actually legally married. So in the book, Edward talks about how there's a 2-step process to marriage back then. It was like you would get betrothed, where you were kind of like legally married, and then you would move in together. So at this point, she was actually technically legally married. She was not engaged in the way that we view engagement today. She was actually technically married. Another thing that I also kind of want to point out, which bothers me a little bit, and I don't want to get too much into this, but she was 13 or around 13 is what Edward says is the age that she was when this happened. Now, listen, I understand back in the day, things ran differently and whatever, but I don't know how I feel about her being 13, and I don't know. That's kind of my only complaint throughout this whole thing, is that she was 13, or around 13. It's like you couldn't have had her be a little bit older. Like, come on now. She was a child. But again, we view things differently now than we did back then. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying that's how it is. So I can't I can't really say whether or not that is okay. I mean, it's definitely not okay today, but I have no words for that. I really don't. So anyway, we're going to skirt around that and go right to the angel Gabriel visits Mary, proclaiming, "Hail, full of grace, the Lord is with you." And this is really interesting because Edward talks about this in his book as well, which is that that Gabriel refers to Mary as full of grace and doesn't refer to her by her name, which is really interesting because it's almost as if he was giving her a new name by calling her full of grace. And Edward says that nowhere else in the Bible has anybody ever been referred to in this manner. So that's really interesting, and that's a really fascinating point. Oh, I was wrong. There is something else that bothers me a little bit. The fact that Mary says, "I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be done to me according to your word." So Edward says that handmaid typically means slave or servant. But then he goes on to say that... Hold on, let me get my notes. But then he goes on to say that the term in the New Testament means to accept God's authority in their lives and serve his purpose. Edward says that even Paul refers to himself as a slave of Christ and God. And he lists Romans 1:1, I'm not entirely sure, Galatians 1:10, and Titus 1:1. Titus 1:1. So I don't know how I feel about this whole being a slave to God thing. I understand the whole worshiping God thing and giving him love and giving him praise and giving him glory and whatever, but the whole I'm a slave to you thing is a little weird to me. Is it just me? It can't be just me, right? I don't know. Something about that just rubs me the wrong way. And yeah, I'm just gonna say that. I definitely was not fully prepared to read that. And what's really interesting is I've actually read a majority of the New Testament, and I did not realize most of these things. Oh, we have a visitor. It's my baby, or one of my babies. I have a dog too, but it's my kitty. He's coming to say hi. Say hi. His name is Onyx. Say hi, baby. Hi. Hi, baby. Okay. Sorry, I'm in the middle of something. You gotta give me some time. Anyway. So, this whole being a slave to God thing kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I feel like the way that Edward poses this in the book is that it's a good thing to be a slave to God. But I just don't agree with that at all. I don't think that God would want us to be slaves. We have free will. That's the whole purpose of our existence, is that we have free will. And he's saying that we're slaves to God. I don't know. That just rubbed me the wrong way. So anyway, sorry, that was second tangent of the episode. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so when we're talking about the birth of Jesus, he starts talking about the census that was going on at the time of the king and whatever, and stuff that I didn't really understand, things that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Again, my sometimes my brain just doesn't comprehend things, especially when it comes to history, and I have a hard time. Okay, I'll be honest. history bores me sometimes. And when he started talking about the census, I was like, can we just move on? I don't care about the census. So there's a census. I don't know what it means or what it has anything to do with. But so Luke reports that Mary gave birth to Jesus and laid him in a manger because there was no place for him in the inn. So this is really interesting because there is some debate over what this inn is. And Edward says that this could have been a living quarters that had like a section of animals, and then Jesus was born in that section of animals. Or he also could have been born inside of a cave. But there's really no like solid answers about that. We're just kind of going off of the surrounding texts, and it's not very clear entirely where he was born. But what is really important about this, and I wanted to talk about this, is the way that Jesus came into this world. And Edward talks about this in the book too, is that Mary knew that Jesus was the Son of God. And Mary had to give birth to Jesus in a place that was not holy, in a place that was not honoring him. And as a mother, that definitely probably hurt her. And she still stuck through it. And she did everything she could for him. And that's one thing that I really love about Mary, is that she sticks by her son through everything that happens. She always stands by her son. And it reminds me of my own mother. My mother always stands by my side. And, there was a time in my life when I came out as gay where she wasn't standing by my side. And that really hurt tremendously. And I'm going to get emotional here because that was a really hard time in my life, knowing that my mother didn't support me. But she ended up coming around. And now she's like my biggest supporter. She's always there, and that's how Mary was with Jesus. She was always there with him, always. And she stood by him through thick and thin. And that's just really important to me. And even though he was born, he entered this world in a crappy way and left this world in an even crappier way. Like, she was there through when he came into this world and when he left this world. And that to me is really powerful. So anyway, Mary stayed with Jesus up until his final moments on the cross, which most of the apostles didn't even do. The only apostle that stayed with Jesus until the end was John. And Mary was there with Jesus until the end. And I think that is really important and really, really vital. She did what she could. She always tried to do her best, and I think that's really, I don't know, that's the best that she could do. She did what she could do. And can you imagine being a mother and watching your son enter this world in the way that he did and leave this world the way that he did? Like, can you imagine having to watch that? It's just unreal. And that's why I hold Mary at such a high standard, because she did it all. She did it all for him. So, anyway, to get to the big question of this video that we're talking about here, is Mary crowned queen of heaven and earth? So let's take a look at the section in this book that he talks about, where he talks about this. I'm trying to find it. Oh, okay. So this is Revelation 12:1-5. And it says, "And a great portent appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was with child, and she cried out in her pangs of birth in anguish for delivery. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diamonds upon his heads. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child, and he might devour her child when she brought it forth. She brought forth a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and to his throne." So, as we're talking about this, it's very easy to identify 2 of the 3 things in this passage. The first one is the dragon, which is definitely obviously talking about Satan. The second thing is talking about the male child, which is obviously talking about Jesus. But then we have to consider who is the woman that this passage is talking about. So Edwards says the identity of the woman is not explicit. To identify the woman, we must consider 5 facts we learn about her in Revelation 12. First, the woman has a crown of 12 stars, which recalls the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes of Israel. Second, she delivers her child with birth pains. This recalls the daughter Zion prophecies of the Old Testament. Zion is the mountain of Jerusalem, and that is personified as a mother figure who endures labor pains before giving birth to a child. The image of Lady Zion giving birth became a powerful symbol for how the faithful Jewish people would endure many sufferings in the period leading up to the Messianic age. Third, the woman who gives birth to the Messiah, the woman gives birth to the Messiah, the one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. Fourth, the woman's son fulfills what the Lord says in Genesis 3:15, foretelling that the woman would have a descendant who would defeat the devil. Chapter 12 of Revelation dramatically depicts the fulfillment of his prophecy as the dragon is cast down to earth and defeated while the woman's male child is caught up and to his throne. And the last thing, the 5th thing, the woman experiences the blessings of a new exodus. After her son's victory over the devil, the woman flees the wilderness, and she is nourished by God and rescued by the eagle's wings, which is Revelation 12:6-13-16. Images that recall Exodus story in which Israel is brought out into the wilderness, where she is nourished by the God with the manna and protected by eagle's wings, and God says to them, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and I have brought you to myself." So I really think that after reading that the woman being talked about here is Mary. I think it makes perfect sense. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it, because, we're talking about, a woman who her son defeats the devil, and that's what Jesus does. So it makes sense that the woman would be Mary. So, and the New Testament teaches that all of Christ's followers will share in his reign. Jesus told the apostles that those who follow him will sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Paul also says, if we have died with him, we shall also live with him. If we endure, we shall also reign with him. And, the other thing is that, I believe that Mary intercedes for us in heaven. I really do. I think that Mary definitely has an important role in heaven. I personally do believe that Mary does have queenship in heaven. And I do believe that she is the queen of heaven and earth, just based on what I have read from this Walking with Mary book and the way that it explained to me the Revelation chapter. I think that it makes perfect sense that Mary would be that figure. But what exactly does that mean? I honestly don't know. I'm not a theologian. I'm not, I'm hoping to one day be. I'm hoping to go to school for theology or religious studies or something and get a better education on these kinds of topics. But I'm just a regular person who loves talking about spiritual, religious topics and wants to share my thoughts with everyone. And that's why I created this podcast. I don't claim to know everything, and I don't claim to be, I don't claim to be anything that I'm not, I just want to share my thoughts and my opinions and my experiences with people. And that's why I wanted to talk about Mary today, because Mary is such an important part of my life. And I think that she matters. I do believe that she intercedes. I believe that when I pray to her, I believe that she's listening to me. And I think that, I don't know. I think that she's out there, and that she's not just, I don't think that she's just, another one of us. I think that she has an important role, But what do you all think about this? I'm very curious to know what everybody else thinks about this topic, and let me know what you all think about this podcast so far. This is my second episode, and I'm really nervous about this podcast because it's been, it's been something I've been working on for a long time, and I'm finally getting it, the way that I want it to be. And, I'm just, this is a passion project for me, and I just want people to love this as much as I do. And I hope that people can find some joy in listening to these podcasts. Like I said, I'm gonna try and shake up these episodes so you're not getting like Christian, episodes every week. Some weeks we might talk about spellcrafting and witchcraft, and some weeks we might talk about Buddhism, and other weeks we might talk about shamanism and things like that. So definitely stay on the lookout. And I do want to have guests. And you don't need to be like a theologian or anything. Like, if you're somebody who has a passion for spirituality, then I would love to have you on and do a little podcast episode with you and discuss, your viewpoints and what you think about things, because that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to be able to transcend together, hence the title, hence the name. Just let me know what you all think about this so far. And I am working on getting the episodes up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I apologize that this is taking longer than I thought it would. I didn't realize that I would need to pay for a hosting website. Didn't realize that I would have to do that. So I'm working on getting the episodes up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as soon as I can. And anyway, I think that's all I have for you today. So let me know what you think about Mother Mary. Let me know what you think about this episode. If you like this and you're watching it on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up. And I will see you all again real soon. Have a nice day. Bye.